Good morning, everyone, members of the committee, clerk, legislative research, ladies and gentlemen, communications. I'd like to call the Standing Committee on General Government to order. Today we are here to hear from a number of interested parties concerning Bill 163, an act to enact the Safe Access to Abortion Services Act 2017, and to amend the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act in relation to abortion services.
A motion?
Ms. Martow, Mrs. Martow, okay, go ahead. That is in order.
I move that the Standing Committee on General Government strike the presenter scheduled at 2:15, Paul from the agenda, do not hear his oral presentation, and direct the clerk to notify him if possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion, Ms. McLeod.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Fromm is a noted neo-Nazi. He has been banned from Parliament Hill, and I think the type of hate speech that he has brought forward elsewhere across Canada is not really welcome in the Ontario Legislature nor in one of our committees.
Thank you. Mr. Fraser.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for bringing this motion forward. We fully support it.
Further discussion on Ms. Martow's motion? There being none, I shall call for the vote. Those in favor of Ms. Martow's motion? Any opposed? I declare Ms. Martow's motion passed, and as such, the clerk has clear direction from the motion and will move forward accordingly. Having said that, we will welcome our first debutante this morning from the Association of Ontario Midwives. We have Joanna Berenstein, or Stein, who is Director of Policy. So we welcome you, and again, state your name for the record so that I have it clear.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juana Berenstein, and I'm here representing Ontario's midwives. Since 1994, midwives have been publicly funded and integrated into Ontario's health system. Midwives are primary care providers and provide care from conception to 6 weeks postpartum for both mom or the pregnant parent and baby. Funded by the Ministry of Health, there are almost 900 midwives working across 90 clinics in Ontario. And overall, midwives attend about 15% of births in the province. Midwifery is a growing profession, both in terms of numbers. 3 universities graduate about 90 new midwives each year. And midwifery is also growing in terms of role and scope. Our vision is one in which the healthcare system leverages midwives as primary care providers across the reproductive health spectrum. Midwifery is a unique profession, a profession dedicated to the reproductive health of women and of transgender people, and as such, we're uniquely positioned to understand the relevance of this legislation. I'm here today to express our support for the new legislation that would create safe access zones in Ontario so that people can exercise their basic human rights, including accessing health care without fear or intimidation and making choices about one's own health and body. Our position as an organization is pro-choice, and we believe reproductive rights must encompass safe access to legal abortion care. Our international body includes abortion care as an essential element of basic reproductive health services and recognizes midwives as providers of competent and safe abortion care. We support the approach in the Safe Access Zones legislation, and while we were disappointed that midwives are not specifically included in the legislation, we understand that a mechanism has been included that would enable midwives to be added in the future. Being able to access such a mechanism is of high importance to our members. While midwives do not currently provide abortion services in Ontario, we are working to change that. Our discussions with the College of Midwives of Ontario has revealed that they're supportive of midwives expanding their role into the provision of abortion care, and very recently our association signed a new funding agreement with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care that includes the creation of a funding stream for expanded midwifery care models, which can include abortion care, and which we hope will enable Ontario to develop models of care that support the essential principles of midwifery, including the provision of abortion in a model rooted in informed choice, continuity of care, and being able to provide care both at home and in hospital. Leveraging midwives as abortion care providers in Ontario is close on the horizon. Medical and surgical abortions are already largely within midwifery scope. Like I said, the government already funds 90 midwifery clinics across Ontario, including in many rural and remote communities where abortion services may not currently be accessible or close to home. And continuity of care, we know, is beneficially retained in the case of clients already in midwifery care who have pregnancies that aren't viable. And by leveraging midwives, these clients can remain in midwifery care throughout the process of termination or miscarriage without needing a transfer to another provider or without needing to access an emergency room in a hospital. A report from ECHO stated that the abortion system in Ontario is fragile and that there are decreasing numbers of hospitals and providers offering abortion, and that those who do are often difficult to identify due to safety concerns, and that the lack of abortion services available outside urban areas poses further access barriers. This legislation is an important step to creating improved safety for those providing and accessing abortions, and we hope that it will be a catalyst for improving a fragile system so that those who seek abortions can access care close to home. Midwives are experts in reproductive health, and based on the experience of Ontario midwives, we know firsthand the relevance and significance of access to safe abortion care. This legislation will directly impact the work of midwifery and the care midwives provide. We look forward to seeing this proposed legislation become law, as well as collaborating with government to leverage midwives in the provision of improved abortion care across Ontario. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. We'll start with the official opposition, and Ms. Marteau.
Hi, thank you very much for coming in. I used to work as an optometrist before I got elected, and when I first started practicing, we didn't work very collaboratively with ophthalmologists. And by the end of my career in optometry, it was quite the opposite, where ophthalmologists actually shared offices with optometrists. So it went from actually being illegal, according to our colleges, to work together, to collaborating very closely. And I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit for us on collaborative efforts in the healthcare, the different healthcare professions, how your profession is working with the other healthcare professions.
Right, so it sounds like there's lots of parallels between the professions. Thank you for the question. We have certainly been engaged in activities to really support the integration of midwifery since it was brought into the public healthcare system, and including looking at care in early pregnancy. So we've had discussions in the healthcare sector, and we feel that there's broad-based support for midwives moving into providing this kind of care. And it makes sense from a perspective of access, but also from the perspective of continuity of care. So we know that there are women who go into midwifery care whose pregnancies aren't viable, and we've heard from midwives that sometimes those women end up needing to go into the emergency room or into an abortion clinic, and it isn't the right kind of care or the best kind of care for those women. They wanted a pregnancy, they're already in midwifery care, and we would really like to be able to see midwives continue to provide that care. And also for women who are seeking to terminate a pregnancy. We know that midwifery has excellent outcomes and has been able to create safety and comfort in a really exemplary client-centered model that we feel could really value Ontarians who need care around termination and an early pregnancy.
Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. We'll move to the third party, Ms. Sadler.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that you were initially somewhat disappointed that midwives weren't explicitly named in the legislation, but that there is a mechanism to enable this to happen in the future. Is that, were you satisfied with that? Or did you raise this concern with the drafters of the bill, and were you satisfied with the explanation you received as to why midwives weren't explicitly named in the bill?
Yes, thank you for your question. We did raise our concern, and we do feel satisfied that our concerns were heard and addressed so our concern is that midwives aren't currently included, and we understand that midwives aren't currently providing abortion services, but we do feel that that could likely change within the next 12 months because of some of the pieces that I spoke about in terms of the removal of regulatory barriers at the college, but also the new funding mechanism that's been negotiated with the Ministry of Health that's going to allow for expanded models. And so we feel satisfied that once midwives do begin the provision of abortion care, that they will be able to access the protection that the Safe Access Zones legislation is extending to both providers and clinics.
Okay. And you had mentioned concern about protesters as a barrier for physicians and I guess MPs or clinics to, not clinics so much, but certainly physicians to be providing abortion services. Have midwives, perhaps in other provinces, are you aware of experiences where midwives have encountered protesters and consider this to be a barrier to their ability to provide services?
Yes, so we have done a jurisdictional review, and we've looked at jurisdictions where midwives do provide abortion care, and there are a number of them to look at, both in Europe and in the United States. There's a number of states in the US where midwives do provide abortion services, including in states like California, and that we know that creating safety for both providers, clinics, and people accessing services is a really important part, a piece of ensuring that people who need to access abortion care services are able to do so without fear or intimidation. And so, yes, we have heard stories of midwives who are abortion providers being targeted or intimidated, as are other physician and nurse providers and staff of abortion services.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the government. Mr. Fraser.
Great. Thank you very much for being here, for your presentation, and for all your input into the consultation process. And as you've accurately described, it is not reflected in the bill because it's not currently, midwives are not part of the provision of that service. But there are a regulatory ability to when that scope becomes expanded, and I do understand that there are conversations going on a variety of things in scope for midwives, not just this. So that I'm confident that once that gets determined, that indeed the protections that you need will be there and in place. I think what's here is a really balanced approach to what we're trying to achieve in terms of the safety for practitioners and for women, most importantly. So I want to thank you for your work. I'm very fortunate in Ottawa South. I've got the Ottawa Birthing Center and a new practice just recently, and I want to thank you. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your
Appreciate it.
time
Thank
today.
Good. Well, we'd like to thank you for coming before committee this morning. Have a great day. Next on the agenda, we have from the Ontario Coalition for Abortion Clinics, Carolyn Egan, who is the spokesperson, and we welcome you, Mrs. Egan. You have up to 5 minutes for your presentation, followed by 3 minutes of questioning from each
Thank
party.
you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you on behalf of the Ontario Coalition for Abortion Clinics. We're the organization that worked with Dr. Henry Morgenthaler in the campaign to remove abortion from the Federal Criminal Code. This resulted in the historic Supreme Court decision in 1988, which gave the legal right to abortion in this country, placing the decision in the hands of those who were seeking it. I would like to give a bit of an historical overview of the obstacles we have faced in Ontario since that time and why we must have the right to access reproductive health care without fear of harassment or intimidation if that hard-won right is to be a reality for all. We have seen that there's an increase in anti-choice activities at sites that offer abortion services. Some clinics experience almost daily protests, others more sporadically. Patients often feel frightened or upset when they are confronted by these protesters. No one should be treated in this way, with people trying to block their access or interfere in their decision-making. They feel judged and shamed, with their sense of privacy violated. This is well documented and became such a problem that the Mayor of Ottawa called for help to alleviate the pressure on clients and staff. Let me tell you what it was like after the Supreme Court struck down the federal abortion law. Hospitals and clinics were able to provide abortions to those who made the decision to end a pregnancy without the criminal code restrictions that previously existed. But at the same time, those who opposed abortion felt that they had the right to interfere with that decision. They initiated what they called Operation Rescue, a tactic that was imported from the United States, which saw up to 100 protesters blockading clinics. They tried to actually physically stop women from accessing the sites, creating an atmosphere that some referred to as a war zone, calling women and others murderers, baby killers, literally trying to take away the right to decide how to best deal with an unplanned pregnancy from the individuals themselves. We had to create safe houses where patients would go before their appointments, often in the homes of supportive families in the area. They would be met by volunteer escorts who would bring them to the clinics, shielding them as they could from the harassment of those who would try to stop them from accessing a medical service that they felt was the best choice for themselves and often their families. And it was not only the patients, staff were harassed as well. Doctors, counselors, nurses, support staff, interfered with, stopped from going to their jobs. The goal was to force them to leave their positions. Doctors had pickets at their homes. It created an atmosphere of intimidation and fear, which no one should have to endure to exercise a basic human right, a legal right. The situation deteriorated further with the firebombing of the Morgentaler Clinic on Harvard Street, the shooting of Dr. Hugh Short at his home in Ancaster, Ontario. Other doctors in Winnipeg and Vancouver were also shot. Those, of course, were the work of extremists, but it speaks to the atmosphere that staff and physicians were working under and patients were first forced to endure. The Morgentaler Clinic was the first to apply for an injunction because of the severity of the situation it faced. As time went on, others were able to be covered as well. But as more clinics were established, they were not protected and the problems continued, as other deputants will outline later in the day. The 1994 injunction is now no longer in place. Today, many more health providers will need protection due to the dispensing of mifegamizole, the abortion medication, which is now available and will be offered as at physicians' offices as well as clinics and hospitals. This is a huge step forward with the potential to greatly increase access, particularly in underserviced areas. In the United States, 50% of all abortions now take place with mifegamizole. These practitioners must be protected as well as pharmacists who dispense it and those who wish to access these services. Nothing happens in a vacuum. We are living in a North American context with an anti-choice administration in the United States that has made a priority to attack abortion rights and health centers such as Planned Parenthoods, which offer abortion as well as many other reproductive services. This has unfortunately emboldened those on both sides of the border who do not believe that we should have the right to abortion. This newfound confidence in the small minority in this country that are anti-choice has heightened the risks, and we are feeling the brunt of it today. We do not want to live in this type of society. One should not have to be a hero or a heroine to access or provide a basic medical service that is an essential part of healthcare. That is what we are talking about today. People, of course, are free to educate and to demonstrate in support of their views, but they do not have the right to interfere with another person trying to exercise their rights. So-called sidewalk counseling is not counseling at all, but an attempt to guilt women into continuing an unwanted pregnancy. We know it is always the most vulnerable, the young, the racialized, the low income, who are denied many options in our society. That is why we also support the right to childcare, a decent job, employment equity, gender equality, and all the other measures that we need to have real choices in our lives, including the right to have the children we choose to have. We are seeking reproductive justice in every aspect of our lives. The right to abortion is an illusion if we are not able to access the facilities that provide it without fear of intimidation and harassment. No one should be subject to this type of abuse. We know what has happened in the past, and we do not want to see it repeated, and this is what we're fearful of. All Ontarians should be able to access any health service with their head held high, confident that their rights will be protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we shall start with Ms. Sadler from the third party.
Yes, thank you very much, Carolyn, for your presentation and for your incredible advocacy over the years. It's very much appreciated. You mentioned the Morgentaler Clinic in Toronto was the first to apply for an injunction.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit about why bubble zone legislation is an improvement over having individual clinics seek injunctions?
Yes, well, the Morgentaler Clinic had to pay for the legal costs for that initial injunction. Later, the government did step in and put them broader, but all those injunctions, aside from the original one, stopped as of January of this year, 2017. But the situation was extraordinary, and I remember it well. And it just was a situation where women were fearful of even making an appointment. It was a question of people being interfered with and stopped, frankly, stopped. I mean, local community groups, church groups, student groups, unions, all got volunteer forces to help escort women through those situations. So it was a terrible circumstance, and it abated at some of the key clinics. But what we're seeing over the last period, I would say in the last year, a huge heightening of problems at clinics today.
And it is your sense from the physicians, you mentioned the dispensing of mifepristone, and it is your sense that physicians may be reluctant to dispense or prescribe
Yes,
without
that's
the bubbles
definitely
in?
the case. I was speaking to some physicians in Barrie, for example, and they were wanting to do it because they know the access is difficult in that area, and yet there was a hesitation about what it meant for them personally. And I mean, we've had situations, and this is very recent, where a physician at a clinic, things were leafleted in their own neighborhood that this isn't a doctor and provider, or pickets set up saying murderers inside, and doctors are fearful to give their names out. I mean, this is a ridiculous situation that in this day and age, 2017, in Ontario, that this type of a problem would exist. And so we really do feel the government taking a stand, all parties taking a stand, is hugely important.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Government, Mr. Berardinetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you for coming out this morning. I just had a quick question. In your experience, are concerns about privacy, harassment, and shaming something that patients worry about when they seek abortion services?
Yes.
Okay, and so the new legislation that we propose, the way it's set up now, you support it the way it is set up?
I mean, obviously, there's always perfect legislation.
Yes.
But I think this is a step in the right direction. There's no two ways about it. I know that some of the clinics are concerned that the 50 isn't enough. They're looking to the 150, all of that. But we do feel it's a step, and hopefully will be just a real signal that this type of behavior is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the official opposition. Ms. Thompson.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming in today, and we're of the opinion that this bill needs to get passed, and we don't want to delay it, so we appreciate your comments, and thank you again for coming in.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming before
Thank
committee
you.
this morning. Have a great day. Next we have from the Association for Reformed Political Action, Tabitha Ewart. She's an Articling student, and if you could, Ms. Ewart, just move into the middle. That would be much appreciated. So the floor is yours. You have up to 5 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Tabitha Ewart, and I am from the Association for Reformed Political Action, or ARPA Canada. ARPA Canada was one of the parties to the case that took this government to the Ontario courts over the refusal to release abortion statistics. And the court found in that case that censoring of such data was an unconstitutional violation of the free expression. And in essence, the court recognized that there's an ongoing discussion about abortion in this province, and that the government cannot interfere with that discussion. And so we are happy to see that this government is bringing FIPA in line with that ruling, but we have major concerns about the rest of this bill and the way that it interferes with the ongoing public discussion. I have two main points that I would like to make regarding this bill. The first is that it's unnecessary. We have criminal code prohibitions that cover all of the extreme behaviors such as assault. And the second point I want to make is with regard to freedom of expression and peaceful protesters who would be covered by this bill. So first of all, it is unnecessary. There is just no evidence that without this bill that women's safety or access to abortion would at all be infringed. In Canada, we have safe access to abortion. And part of the reason for this safe access is the fact that we have criminal code prohibitions that prohibit such things as assault, threatening, intimidation, or harassment. These provisions cover abortion clinics just as they cover the rest of the province. And the one incident that is referred to in support of this bill, the alleged spitting in Ottawa, that is assault. That can be charged under the criminal code. There's no reason for the province to supplement the criminal code in that situation. In fact, it is unconstitutional for them to do so because only the federal government can pass criminal code prohibitions. Inasmuch as this government is attempting to supplement or fill in perceived gaps, this bill is unconstitutional. And the sponsor of this bill, the Attorney General, he should be prosecuting such crimes rather than inventing new laws that also silence peaceful protesters. And for the second point, the freedom of expression, making it illegal to show disapproval of abortion, that is not about protecting patients or physicians. That is about silencing dissent on the issue. It's about silencing pro-life speech. But we have no right to be free from dissent in Canada, no matter what issue is at stake. And I just want to be clear on this point, because there's a lot of rhetoric around this issue, that protecting women's rights or making a step forward for women's rights cannot include fining and imprisoning women who disagree. And that is what this bill does. It says if you hold a certain opinion, you cannot express it. Your constitutional rights are not protected. That is unconstitutional, and it does not aid the ongoing public discussion that is going on in Ontario over the issue. For extreme behavior, for harassment, for assault, that is covered under the criminal code. For peaceful protesters, no need to silence them in this ongoing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we shall start with the government and Ms. Kiwala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming here and bringing forward your testimony. Abortion is a legal and funded health procedure in Ontario, and women seeking out legal health care services should not feel shame, intimidation, or harassment, or be exposed to counseling from strangers on the side of the street. Women who are in such circumstances of having to avail themselves of abortion services do not do so lightly. It is a challenging time in their lives and always a difficult life circumstance. They have already been through counseling. We have heard of cases where protesters are filming or recording patients as they enter and exit facilities. Under this legislation, protesters would maintain their right to freedom of expression outside of the proposed safe access zones. The purpose of this bill is to protect the safety, security, health, and privacy of patients seeking abortion services and those providing them. Many health providers report being the subject of protests, shaming, and harmful correspondence. I'm wondering if I could just ask you one brief question. Do you oppose anti-harassment protection for health providers?
Thank you for the question. And just to be clear, I'm never in support of harassing anyone. That is why we have criminal code prohibitions against harassment. That would cover, that would protect physicians, would protect women.
If you could just focus on that one aspect of the question, I'd really appreciate it. Just want to talk about the health providers' private residences.
Yeah, again, harassment, no matter whether it's at a private residence, whether it's at an abortion clinic, whether anywhere, that is illegal under the criminal code. That should be charged under the criminal code. It is not for the province to then say, we want to have additional laws covering that.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you. We shall move to the official opposition. Ms. Martow.
Thank you so much for coming in. I don't think we have any questions, but thanks.
Thank you.
We shall move to the third party. Ms. Sattler.
Thank you very much. Was the BC law found to be constitutional or unconstitutional?
So the BC law, back in the early 90s, the BC Court of Appeal, it never did go to the Supreme Court. The BC Court of Appeal did find that it infringed freedom of expression, but they saved it under Section 1 of the Charter. And part of the reason of that is that was a different time. The protests surrounding the original Morgentaler Clinic's opening were much different than what we see now. And even in that decision, the BC Court of Appeal recognized that in 1996, the provision was not as necessary as it was in 1990. And I would strongly argue that in 2017, it's even less necessary. So I don't think the justification that the BC Court of Appeal found 12 years ago would suffice for this law.
That's your opinion. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. It appears there's no further questions. Thank you very much for coming before committee this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day. Okay, we are ahead of schedule. Just informing the members of the committee. And as such, Mr. Wojciechowski, I had it right before. So it's Wojciechowski is here, but his two other guests are not. So I just want to inform the committee that we will move to the 10 a.m. Planned Parenthood Toronto. Ms. Hobbs Blythe is here. She's the executive director, and she's prepared to go. So we would like to welcome you to committee this morning. If you could sit in the middle, that would be much appreciated. Either of the two middle chairs is fine. So we welcome you. You have up to 5 minutes for your presentation, followed by 3 minutes of question.
Hello. I would like to thank the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak before you on this very important issue. My name is Sarah Hobbs Blythe, and I am the Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Toronto. I am here on behalf of our clients, volunteers, staff, and Board of Directors to speak about why we support bringing to force Bill 163, the Safe Access to Abortion Services Act 2017. Today, you will also hear from a number of other pro-choice organizations. We agree with our esteemed colleagues about why this act is paramount in protecting the right to choose for women, non-binary, and trans people. Yet I wish to speak to you about why Bill 163 is much further reaching. The Safe Access to Abortion Services Act also enacts safe access to a wide variety of healthcare services. As a community health center for youth, our services are integrated, comprehensive, and cover a range of supports including programming, mental health, primary care, and sexual and reproductive health needs. The connotation of our name implies that we provide abortion on site. However, historically, Planned Parenthood Toronto has never provided abortion services. In fact, in 2016, we had as many clinical encounters with those seeking anxiety supports as women seeking birth control, for which both categories tripled the encounters we offered for abortion information and referrals. Yet our name belies. Our unapologetic advocacy for reproductive freedom puts a target on our back. The fact is, anti-abortion protest is on the rise. The National Abortion Federation of Canada found that outside abortion clinics in Ontario, the number of picketers reported has doubled since 2014, and our lived experience confirms. For example, Planned Parenthood Toronto has had anti-choice picketers at our door who have gone so far as to enter the clinic on multiple occasions. We have had ominous signs posted on our building, and we have been told that we deserve to be hanged for the work that we do. So I ask for you to consider a 15-year-old seeking mental health services, a youth who has been truly courageous to reach out for this kind of support. Consider seeking health care just to encounter relentless protest as you try to enter the building where the care you need is being offered. Consider being accosted with gruesome images upon arrival. Consider having assumptions made about you and receiving unwanted counsel. Consider having your privacy breached in that very vulnerable moment. As I'm sure we all agree, this is not the healthcare Ontarians deserve. The harms produced by anti-choice protests do not discriminate. Simply by accessing the area around diverse healthcare facilities, anti-choice rhetoric negatively affects people no matter the care they seek. We support Bill 163's ability to cover a range of facilities and providers. We appreciate that it is written as a living document that can be amended with the evolving healthcare landscape. Planned Parenthood Toronto works to ensure that those that face the greatest barriers to access receive health care that is right for them. Safe access zones protect all that we do. For this reason, Bill 163 is a crucial part of achieving health equity. There is no denying that mifegammiso, the abortion pill, has changed the game. For the first time, Planned Parenthood Toronto will be offering an abortion option on site. We know firsthand the fear that healthcare providers may feel when taking this crucial step. That is why we must advocate today for a clearly articulated application process in the legislation. We request that the application be simple, free of charge, and require a low threshold of need-based evidence. Approving Bill 163 is needed to ensure the safety of those prescribing mifegammiso, not only for those in urban centers, but especially for rural providers. Primary practice in rural settings is particularly vulnerable because it can be the only point of contact with health services for a great distance. Rural providers must be able to balance the safety of themselves, their family, and their practice with the vital need to provide the abortion pill in remote areas where abortion is disproportionately inaccessible. The right to abortion care must mean the right to reasonably access this care without resources required to travel. By passing Bill 163, rural practitioners need not decide between their medical duty and their safety. Safe access legislation has stood up in the Supreme Court 3 times. It is sound, it is balanced, and it is needed today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall start with the government. Mr. Baker.
Ms. Hobbs-Blythe, thank you very much for coming in today. You spoke about, in your remarks just about a minute ago, about the need to protect the safety of both the practitioners but also their families and the practice itself. And so could you speak a little bit to your thoughts on the need for the safe access zones for the providers themselves and for clinic staff homes?
So I think it's imperative that the providers feel protected under this legislation, that they know that if they're dropping their child off to daycare, if they're attending a performance somewhere, if they're attending an event, a work function, whatever it may be, that they know that they can be free of intimidation, of harassment, of any kind of public shaming for the work that they do, which is legal and safe and an approved medical procedure. As well as for the people working at the clinic, I think that people, like all Ontarians who come to work, we all came to work today and we didn't have to face picket lines, we didn't have to face people shaming us or try to make us feel badly for what we do, and we didn't have to have fear coming into work. And so I think that for the staff at Planned Parenthood, we have seen a rise in anti-choice activity at Planned Parenthood, and so we have gone as far to work with local enforcement to develop a security plan. We've installed security camera where we never have had that before. We have locks that are different internally in our building. We have gone through different drills with our staff. All of these things are new to us because of the rise in the anti-choice activity, and we feel that we have a duty to protect the people working, and I think that this bill will help us protect the people working at our place.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the official opposition. Ms. Thompson.
I just want to say thank you very much for coming in and sharing your perspective today.
Thank you.
Third party, Ms. Sattler.
Yes, thank you very much for for the research that you included in your presentation, and also for your remarks. It is very helpful. The question of the application for the safe access zone. So that is something that obviously Planned Parenthood Toronto is planning to apply for once the legislation comes into force, if passed, which it seems like it's going to be. Have you heard, have you been given reassurances that some of the criteria that you have outlined here that you would like to see in the application process? Has the government indicated that they are hearing your feedback and are looking at an application zone or process that would meet your needs?
I feel fairly confident that during the consultation process we were asked questions about what the application process should or shouldn't look like, and what would make a low barrier application process. And I feel, given the legislation and the way that it's been presented, it feels to me like the government has listened to the people who have been consulted on this process. So I feel that yes, I'm hopeful that the application process will be something that providers can, especially rural providers, maybe solo office doctors, can apply for without needing a legal team and needing a lot of money to apply for, and don't have to demonstrate a great need of protest or activity in their office. They don't have to have 3 or 4 incidences before they would qualify. So I feel confident that that will be the case.
Okay. An earlier presenter talked about the midwives presentation talked about midwives not being explicitly named in the bill. Is that a concern for the staff who work at Planned Parenthood as well, or do you feel that it's broad enough that it would encompass your staff?
I mean, I think it's important that this legislation be a living document that can accommodate future changes to the healthcare system, and I believe that my understanding is that it's very imminent that midwives might be able to prescribe mifegammiso. So I think that it would be wonderful if the legislation could name that, but I understand that they're not actually prescribing now, so there's there's a limitation to being able to do that, but I think that I've been assured that the legislation is written in a way that can accommodate future healthcare changes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank you, Ms. Hobbs-Blythe, for coming before committee this morning and
Thank
sharing
you.
your insight.
Thanks
Much
for the
appreciated.
opportunity.
You're welcome. So next, we have on the agenda from the Campaign Life Coalition, Matthew Wojciechowski, Esna Ratini, and Valerie Gould, I believe. So we welcome two of you this morning to committee, and we look forward to your presentation, and you have up to 5 minutes for your presentation.
Drink water.
Certainly.
Walking over was pretty tiring.
Yeah, it's pretty hot out there.
It's more.
So the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good morning, honorable members. I would like to begin by thanking you all for accepting our request to present on Bill 163. With that said, I would also like to add that we are deeply disappointed by the government's decision to fast-track this bill, and in doing so, not giving the public, the people, the citizens of this province, enough time to engage on this issue with their MPPs. In just a few weeks, however, we have received thousands of signatures from across the province for our petition, making a strong statement that this isn't what Ontarians want. Campaign Life Coalition opposes this bill entirely. This bill is a direct attack on the freedom of speech, assembly, and expression of Canadians. This bill prevents women from having access to alternatives to abortion. And thirdly, this bill aims to address a problem that doesn't exist. It is a problem made up by the abortion industry and their allies at Planned Parenthood to demonize their opposition and to protect the grisly business of killing children before birth for profit. Pro-life outreach outside of abortion facilities is just bad for business. Over the past week, MPPs on both sides of the floor have been repeating a very toxic narrative. They call us violent, they call us hateful, they claim that harassment at abortion facilities is a constant, when in fact it is a very rare occurrence. They refer to the experience outside of abortion facilities as war zones, because frankly, nothing resembles a war zone like a pair of grandmas standing on a sidewalk praying and holding a sign that says, "Abortion stops a beating heart." Or a group of young people peacefully standing side by side with signs that say, "I regret my abortion." There are many sections of this bill I could discuss, but for the sake of time, I will only highlight two of them. Under Prohibitions, Section 3, the notion that informing women, whether it be through the distribution of pamphlets, offering scientific evidence of the development of her child, engaging in a conversation, or even the act of praying, to consider these things a crime is outrageous. For the state to control civilian interactions is the hallmark of a totalitarian state. And I'm Polish, so I know very much what communism is like. Under Enforcement, Section 8, the penalties for breaking this law are far worse than those for impaired driving. Do you, honorable members of the provincial parliament, believe that an impaired driver who puts the lives of others directly at risk of death is deserving of a lesser punishment than someone holding a sign, praying, or offering support to a woman in need? This is an extreme position out of touch with the values of Ontarians. This bill assumes that every woman that walks into the abortion facility wants the abortion, has made up her mind, and is doing so freely. This is just not true. This legislation is anti-free speech, anti-science, anti-information, and is a contradiction to those who claim to be pro-choice. This isn't about being pro-choice. In this bill, there is only one choice, and that choice is abortion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We shall start with the third party, Ms. Sadler.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have no questions.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, is it okay if my colleague also presents?
Oh, absolutely. You have another minute left, so if you, for the record, if you'd state your name.
Yes.
I wasn't aware that she was going to
Yes.
speak, so go ahead.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Enza Riteni, and I am here to give testimony on Bill 163. I've been a sidewalk counselor for 6 years, and I'm here to share with you my personal experience. First, allow me to clarify what is the role of a sidewalk counselor. A sidewalk counselor is motivated by a genuine desire to offer confidential, non-judgmental, and compassionate support to vulnerable women facing unplanned pregnancies. This outreach is peaceful and respectful. My singular concern was to provide her with a safe space to discuss her situation, to assist in assessing her needs, to inform her on the support available so that she can make her decision according to her own conscience. I have spent thousands of hours doing all of this work in front of the abortion clinics without any altercations. The reason why I go to the abortion clinics is because that is where the need is greatest. In 6 years, I've encountered and offered support to over hundreds of women, and when they did stop to talk, I found out that despite scheduling appointments at the abortion clinic, they felt trapped by their circumstances and or pressured into it. This tells me that their choice was not made in freedom and that there is a lack of information. My response to this problem is to offer these women better options than abortion since the demand was there. Many accepted my offer because it was their best choice. Honorable members, if you enact this law, you essentially eliminate access and awareness of alternative support to women who feel stuck with the option of abortion. One woman said to me after her abortion, "They were really nice to me, but I felt like I couldn't leave. If I had met you before, I would not have had the abortion." And that's a direct quote. Honorable members, I only want what every woman deserves, the right to make an informed choice. This law prevents this fundamental right to all women. This law infringes on the rights of those who have a great love and compassion for these women as I do. A woman who I have helped, well, there were supposed to be 3 of them here, but daycare, it's hard. This is all last minute. But they know what I offered, and it was honesty, it was compassion, and it was respect. We have a friendship. I urge you, in the best interest of those women who feel stuck with abortion as their only option, please do not make illegal with the good work that happens on the sidewalk. I have great respect and compassion for women who face these situations, and I respect all of their decisions. But how can I bring awareness of the support available to those who feel trapped if you take away our rights? Thank you so much, and I just wanted to show you some images of women and children who
thank you very
decided
much.
to choose.
Okay, we don't
pressure
accept props, so we'll just move over to the government side.
They're not props, they're human beings.
They're human faces and human beings.
Ms. Kiwala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to reiterate some of the other comments that I've made, and I think that the chair already informed you that props are not to be used, as I have nothing else to say.
Thank you very much. We shall move to the official opposition. Ms. Martow.
So I want to thank you for coming in, but we don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the question and answer, I guess. So appreciate you coming before committee this morning. Have a great day. Thank you. Okay, so members of the committee, we are ahead of schedule. Therefore, there's no further business for this morning. I look forward to seeing you all at 2 p.m. to continue the public hearing process on Bill 163. So I declare this meeting recessed until 2 p.m.